Good afternoon, lawyers. Welcome back to Learn Law with Hannah. Today I am going to talk about the possible defences to a private nuisance claim. So our defendant doesn't want to pay any money or have an injunction granted against them, and they are going to try to claim that they have a defence in civil law. Now, there are four things we are going to talk about. Two of them are relevant defences, and two of them are not going to work. So as one of my students said, they're like, well, why are we talking about a defence that's not a defence? And that's like a perfectly valid question. I get what they're saying. But what we're looking at, we are talking about, well, yes, they might argue these two things, and this could be taken into consideration when awarding the remedies. So it's still relevant, even though technically it's not a defence, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's start off with the two that are relevant defences that you can claim. So first of all, first case is prescription. Now, this is really quite straightforward. The defence of prescription says that if the claimant hasn't complained about the nuisance for 20 years, then our defendant will have a full defence, and you can use the case of Sturgis as your authority. This was the doctor's consultation room that the doctor set up at the end of their garden, and then they discovered that the nuisance was happening. So it's a 20-year rule. I have no idea why you would put up with something for 20 years. That was really annoying, but yeah, that's what the law says. So I would be looking out for things, little clues in scenarios when it's like, so-and-so has moved to the property 30 years ago, and then they built an extension, and that was 2 years ago, and then it was really noisy. So if they've been in the house for 30 years, but they've only then built the extension, prescription is not going to be a defence. The nuisance has to have continued for 20 years. So prescription, 20 years, dead straightforward. The next possible defence is something called statutory authority. You know what statute is. A statute is an act of parliament. So what the defendant is claiming, that they had permission. They had permission to do the thing that they were doing. They had permission to cause the nuisance. In the case of Allen, with an E, Allen, they were allowed to build an oil refinery that was causing all the nuisance and the interference. They were allowed to build an oil refinery under an act of parliament. So again, look out in a scenario question for any acts of parliament that give our defendant permission to drill or whatever it is. So those are the two. So prescription, 20 years, statutory authority, you have it written in an act of parliament. The two that are not defences, first of all, the first one is moving towards the nuisance. So if you move, I don't know, you buy a flat and there's a fish and chip shop underneath, you can still complain about the fumes and the grease and the smell. Our defendant can't say, well, they knew there was a fish and chip shop, they moved towards the nuisance. So you can use the case again of Sturgis or Miller for that if you wish. And then the other one that is not a defence is something called social utility, or something being for the benefit of the public. So what we mean by this is our defendant is trying to claim, well, I'm providing a big benefit to the public by doing what I'm doing, whether it's a cricket club and the cricket balls keep like flying over into our claimant's property. That is not going to be a valid defence. So moving towards the nuisance is not a defence. So you can use Miller, it was a cricket club one, for your authority on that. So hopefully that helps. So remember, prescription and statutory authority are defences. Moving to the nuisance and social utility or social benefit is not a defence. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.